Okay, so this is going to be a little experiment where I'm going to try dipping into doing some live coding to see if that's something I want to do. Maybe it'll be a little bit fun. So I'm trying it initially, just recording it instead of live streaming it because I'm working on a gift for a friend of mine. His name is Chris, and we usually do this Christmas in July, a little gift exchange, because a lot of people in my friend group go and do things with family, and so we do this in July to have fun and with all of our friends. So the gift exchange is usually themed, and this year is going to be making something yourself from scratch. So what I'm planning to make for him is a Slack bot, hopefully something that he'll like and use. So I thought part of the gift is also going to be me recording the process of making it as a little practice to get used to live coding and get all the setup right, but also just as an interest for him if he wants to work on it further or extend it, he kind of knows the thought process behind it. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, I'm going to be affecting some levels, music, I think that should be good. Okay, so let's start diving into exactly what this project's going to have. So it's going to be called Scotchbot. So this bot is going to be responsible for giving you some Scotch recommendations, managing people's Scotch collections on Slack, and giving you some info about Scotch in general. Yeah, so I found actually a really good database for doing this. Scotch database. And actually get it in a CSV format, so we're going to use that as our base data. Okay, so while that loads, let's start getting this initially set up. So this is a project called Higgins, and this is a collection of like microbots that we're using for our own personal Slack. So you can see here we have all these little bots in here, and I'm going to be making a new one for our Scotchbot. And let's just make up our basic files. So I'm now going to have a scotch.bot.js. I'm also going to be making a little Scotch API file to go in and out of our Scotch DB. And this finally loaded. We're just going to grab a whole CSV right here. And just grab that in here. So you can see what this looks like is a lot of information. And I'm going to dive into what each of these columns do in a second. But this should be all the data we need. So back to here. I'm going to actually call this the whiskey database because it's a little bit more, I don't know how to spell things, whiskey.db.js or .csv. Cool. So we're going to have our whiskey DB being read by our whiskey API, and then our bot is going to be able to use this data to do natural language processing. Maybe we'll build in some things for memorizing collections, just do some filtering so we can build some really nice interfaces for the DB itself, so we don't have to worry about that in all of our bot code. All right, so let's get our bot just going real quick. So I've written a bunch of libraries for really easily interacting with Slack called Pico Slack. You can check that out on my GitHub. I'm going to open up an existing bot just to get going here. Let's do departure bot. Okay, we won't need file system for this. And just going to get a basic bot going. Do I want MeowBot? Yeah, I do. Okay. Okay, yeah, so this little bot here, the MeowBot, when there's a 1 in 15 chance whenever my friend Meg messages, this Higgins will react with a cat emoji. It's kind of fun. So just do slack.message test. Okay, so I already have some good NPM scripts here to set up and run this. So I'm going to show you what those are right No. So we can just do nodemon, oops, nodemon Higgins, and that's going to kick off the server and constantly reconnect it and work. Now the way that I have this set up is I actually have a separate Slack team that I use completely for doing all of my testing. So I'm going to load this up here and get this just in the down corner here. This might actually be hard to do. So we're just going to bring it over here. Okay. Yeah, I like this song. Okay, so now in any message we should have something type us back out. Oh, channel not found. Right. I should actually use my API properly. So you can see it auto restarted there, so it's really handy. Cool. So now it's messaging as Higgins. So Pico Slack actually has a really nice capability of doing message as. So message as allows me to pass two parameters. Allows me to pass in a name and then also a emoji. Let's do glass. Is a wine glass good enough? That kind of looks like a snifter, to be honest, or like a little Scotch glass. Let's go with drinking. Even though it's a wine glass, I think that thing looks the best, to be honest. I can have Chris make his own emoji later if he really wants to. Okay. All right, now that's gonna restart, and we can go back here, and now we have Scotchbot. Perfect. So this is already looking pretty good. All right, so now bot is working. I really like Pico Slack because it really simplifies the whole interface for doing Slack bots completely. Let's turn this music down just a little bit smaller. Okay, perfect. So actually what I want to do is not actually connect with Slack right away. I actually want to make some things to test out the Scotchbot specifically, primarily the Scotch API. So I'm going to set up a nodemon on that. We're going to go into bots, Scotchbot, and yeah, I guarantee you I'm going to whiskey API. Oh my god, how do you spell whiskey? This is a little bit embarrassing. Sure, that makes sense to me. I spelled it like 2 different ways, multiple times. Cool. So we're going to constantly be rerunning this whiskey API. I'm going to just build some light testing code in here as I'm going, and we can bump that out into a testing file later if I so desire. I would do this probably more for a more serious project. I would have like probably install Ava instead of a testing folder, but for something this lightweight, I don't think it's that big of a deal. So we're just going to go console log test, make sure this is running, dev scotch. Cool, and we can do this. Okay, so the first step that I'm going to do is build something really lightweight, probably using Lodash. That's going to pull in the CSV file and parse it into data structures for us. So we're definitely going to need file system and Lodash. CSV. And what did I call this? Okay. All right. Oh, of course. Let's see. see, no file directory. Oh, interesting. What do I want to do here? Let's kill this thing. You should actually be reading from that directory. Huh. Right. Alright. I can change this later, very simply if I need to do that. See, I wanted to read from that specific directory, yeah, like what we have here, but I'm not doing that. Now, I'll just, yeah, put this in for now. Now, I could just install a library to do the CSV processing for me, but for kicks, I kind of want to do it myself, just for fun. So we are going to make a quick thing called process CSV. Cool. Okay. Quiet this down a little bit. Okay, so what do we want to do? Let's walk through this process of parsing the CSV. So CSV, the first line is going to be a comma-separated list of what each of the columns mean. From that point on, each other line is going to be a comma-separated field for each of the data that assigns with those columns. So what we want to do is have this function return us an array of objects that have each of the keys be these column names, and then each of those, each of the values after this producing an object with the value mapped to those keys. Lots of words. Basically, we want to have a bunch of objects that say whiskey, and then each object would have as the value for that this string, and then this string, then this string. We're going to have a value on that object called like stdve, and then it's going to map to these numbers here. So we want to do some number processing as well. Now, normally I wouldn't necessarily do this, but since we know what this table is going to look like, we could actually cut out the first line completely. And I think I might actually do that and actually just know the order that I want these things separated into, and just code those columns in by hand. Because we have weird characters like a pound sign, and I'm going to want to not have them capitalized anyways, so I'm just going to do that by hand. Okay, let's see what I mean in just a second. Just going to put that over there so I can look at it slightly. Okay, so raw CSV is going to come in, and we're going to want to split it by line. And then I want to drop the first line. Move first element JavaScript. So like, doing shit like this is kind of silly, but I just never remember these things here. Like, is it shift, unshift, whatnot? So, okay, so the results of fruits is going to be this. So we just want to split this off. Comments lines, and we're just going to do lines dot shift for now. So technically, I could actually remove that line out of the database itself. We're going to leave it in there just so we can easily eyeball that, and the CSV can be useful if we ever want to grab that out again. So we're going to leave that in there. And now each line is going to map to a corresponding object. So I'm definitely going to want to use a map here on lines. And we're going to call it a whiskey. Okay, and here we're going to have a columns. We'll get to that in just a second. And instead, we're going to do results with a process CSV, the raw CSV that we're putting in. And we are doing the result. Now, when I deal with an algorithm like this that's going to deal with a huge data set, what I like to do is I like to take a subset of that data set with maybe only about 5 values just to work through and test, so I don't have these, you know, over 1,000 undefineds as you can see on the side here. So we're going to do that, and we're going to make a copy of this DB, and I'm just going to call it .temp. And we will cut this all. Perfect. Now, does you end with a new line? No, you're fine. Okay, cool. So now, when this reruns, we now only have 4 undefines, which is kind of perfect. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at parsing this whiskey apart. I'm going to misspell that so many times. Okay, so we're getting these lists out, and so we're going to want to parse these and then also get rid of all of the quotes on them. So it's going to be a little bit of a fun time. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to have to worry about actually doing legit CSV parsing, where looking into each line and not just doing a straight cut on these commas. Now, what I mean by that is, like, if this text here had a comma in it, because it's wrapped in these quotes, then it should only care about this. Actually, no, let's do this legit. Let's actually try to worry for that. So let's do whiskey.split, because we could do something cool like this. Cool. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, that's gonna get annoying so fast. So I have a little macro that I wrote in AutoHotkey that keeps an array of basically common misspellings that I have, and then maps them to fix them automatically for me. So I just add these from time to time. So I go whiskey is going to be remapped to, sorry, it moves up to my main screen. Whiskey. Boom. Okay, so I shouldn't have to worry about that misspelling again. Okay, so we've broken these up, and now what we have is the first and last one still have this extra quote in there, so we're going to have to modify those or clean those up a fair bit. All right. Okay, how do I want to parse these? So I'm just thinking through. You know, I might just manually build the object like this. Okay. Okay, so I'm splitting this up into parts here, and then I'm just going to be manually building the object of the data that I want. So it's not going to be a perfect CSV parser, it's just going to be hyper specific for the data set that I'm pulling out, which I don't think is going to be that big of a deal. So I actually want to call this field something a bit different because I don't like stdv. I know it stands for standard deviation, but I want something a bit more intuitive. Also, I want to parse that to a number. I think I can do that with Lodash. Yeah. Cool. Now, I know there's probably a base value in, or a way to do this by casting to a new number in JavaScript. I like to fall back to Lodash because Lodash is environmentally smart, and so it knows what environment's running in and uses the best or most optimal implementation of those possible. So I know this is a little bit silly, but I like to default to Lodash whenever I can because it just has faith that I'm doing it correct. Okay, so the next thing here with number, I think that stands for the rank. I'll look that up in a second. And we're gonna do parts 2. And what do we have next after that? We have the Metacritic first, actually. So whiskey, I should actually grab this line out. This will just be useful to grab right here. Okay, so we have the whiskey is 0. We have the Metacritic, which I'm just gonna go with rating. And this is to, what is this score out of? Well, let's go back here. So, whiskey Metacritic. Okay. Sure. All right, show me what these mean. Okay, the average normalized score of all reviewers who reported the whiskey. Raw score aggregator, standard normalized deviation. Okay. All right, I might actually build in this little mapping here, which could be useful. I am going to be building in these superclusters as well into the database. Okay. So, interesting. All right. So rating and standard deviation on the mating. This is the number of reviewers in which we have the score. Okay, I'm going to drop that. We don't really need that information that much. I'll put that over there. We can dive back in there. Okay, so we have the rating. And we're going to parse that to a number. Standard deviation. Number of ratings, don't care about. Cost. So we're going to map this to an array given the $signs, but we're going to do that mapping in just a second. I just want to make sure that I get these values out. So we're skipping 1, so we're going to 4. Okay, the class is actually important. That might mess things up because if it's a reserved name. And I'm just going to be using the supercluster. I'm not going to be using the cluster, I don't think. Or take a quick peek at the data, we might be dropping. Yeah, I think the supercluster is going to be more important for us right now. So interesting. So I'm just going to call this group because that actually makes more sense to us. So what the cluster and supercluster mean is actually the gentleman or lady who runs this website has done a really good cluster analysis on the types and flavors of scotches and has grouped them and found basically people like to put scotches on a 2D grid based on like how full-bodied it is and different like fruitiness and things like that. So how peaty it is and usually how fruity it is in the 2D axis, less and more. And then using those positionings in rating systems, been able to kind of do super cluster analysis to get them into distinct groups. You can see these groups here with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. And you can kind of see the descriptions here. So we're going to actually steal those descriptions and have them automatically generated, which is pretty cool. But each of these scotches are mapped to a supercluster and then a cluster. So their superclusters are just like grouping of clusters that you already have an overlapping of characteristics. And so we're just going to fall back to the supercluster whenever we can. And you're going to see a neat trick that I'm going to do with the clusters to make basically dynamic descriptions based on this clustering that's going to seem a little bit more organic than just putting out raw strings. Because that's something you always want to worry or think about when building Slack bots, is that a little bit of randomness goes kind of a long way. Okay, so we have the classification, which is going to be like single mult. Like I'm actually going to call that type. I like that a little bit better in our things. We have group, and then well, I guess type is at the end, so we're going to do class, I guess, group, and then country. Parts, and lastly type. Okay, so let's take a look at how this is outputting. Okay, over here, so we still need to drop off that little thing. The ID is number. Okay, group, country C. Okay, we messed up. Okay, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we need to do 8, 9. Okay. So these look like they map pretty good. Okay. So what we're going to do here is, oh, interesting. Do I have to split on something else? Where are we? Okay, yeah, you saw those, these R's here? That's weird. They're getting in, we have to get those removed. Okay, that's totally fine. I can get those removed there. Okay, so in the type, just gonna do a replace on this and replace on R's. Just character returns, just get them out of there. And on the name, we're also going to get rid of the first character. How do you cut one character out of this? Yeah, if we do replace this, just gonna grab the first one so we can do that. I was worried it was gonna replace other ones, but the JavaScript replaces one instance, which in every other circumstance is kind of frustrating. Okay. Okay, so we have those cleaned up here. Single malt like Scotland, everything's looking really good. I'm kind of tempted to cut everything to do with these braces. I'm going to take a deeper look to see what's actually in these braces here. So we might get overlaps, like just right here with the batch 37 Avalur Abanad and then the batch 33. If we cut the braces out completely, then those are going to be duplicate and we're not going to be able to tell them apart. So which one do we take? So that's going to be a little bit interesting. So, but if we leave them, it might be too much information because, like, look at how many batches there are of this guy already in this data set. Yeah, there's so many batches. Let's see. And like they should be relatively similar, right? Like we might massage this data set as we go and take out values that don't really make sense to us. So we're seeing a lot of Abalur Abanad with batch counts. You know what I might do? I might just take a peek at this real quick. Selection. Sort lines. Okay. See, we have all these batch counts here. Oh my god, look at this. So many Benrigs. One thing I'm going to try to do in my code is basically try to get to not select on these super expensive bottles because I just kind of don't want it to suggest, like, what did it say, 300 plus bottles, $300 bottles of whiskey. That's kind of silly. So I'm kind of tempted to cut those out actually completely from the data, just because if I leave, like, I'm two minds of this, because if I leave them in, then Chris could use the Scotchbot to like look them up and compare them and get some information on them. But at the same time, I just don't want them cluttering up data. I don't want the bot to keep recommending people $300 bottles of scotches when that's just kind of silly. So I might make a modification database, something like what I'm doing here where I sorted it already and I'm kind of working through it. Actually, I'm going to undo that because I need to take this out before that gets sorted. Okay, so I might actually save this as a modification database. Sorry. And we're just gonna call this mod. Okay, so we'll go through that later, but we're not really diving into that too much right now. So we're not gonna actually parse the name in our code. We're gonna do that manually through our DB so we get a more refined list. Okay, so we have everything kind of looking really, really good here. I had this ID in here, so I can use this for referencing later if I want to look up a specific scotch very quickly without doing a string analysis the whole time. Okay, so let's clean up our code a fair bit. Come here. All right. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Okay. And I think there's a plugin to do this, but I'm just gonna do it real quick by hand. I like aligning up on colon, it makes it look a little bit cleaner. Okay, so quick little liner to process our CSV coming in. So we have this. So now we want to decide what our API of our API of our API looks like. So we want to have access to the raw whiskeys themselves. So we're just gonna look at I'm just gonna store this as the list. And whiskeys is it pluralized like that, or is it IE? We may never know. Okay. Okay, so now we have our data. This is being loaded and processed, and then we come in here. Okay. Okay, what do we want to do next? Okay, I think I'm going to go back to the bot. I'm going to write out specifically what kind of applications I want this bot to do, so the types of commands, and then that'll get us an idea of what kind of things we'll have to do in the API. We can start writing some test cases for that. Okay, so in this bad boy, what do we want to do? Okay. Okay. We want it to, okay, we're gonna have to ask it for help, or generally conversational. So when it's not going to pick up any set commands, but you mentioned its name, I'm gonna wanna have it respond kind of colloquially in a fun way. So I'm gonna make a list or corpus of messages that do things like that. Let's see, so we're gonna split that up. Match, ask it for help, so what you can do with it, I'll get there in a second. So actually features, so I want it to recommend me a scotch. Now, what should we do here? So I'm thinking this will be one of the core features of it, is like you could say recommend me a scotch, and if you don't give any more qualifiers to that, I think it will go into a follow-up question. So what kind of qualifiers do we want to do? So an example of one qualifier could be like the price. So do I want it cheap or expensive? Could ask it to say based on your collection, or maybe something similar, or name a scotch similar, a similar scotch, and let's see what else. So I'm trying to think of the flow of what I want this guy to do. So if you just like recommend me a scotch, what is this bot gonna say as a follow-up to that? Is he just gonna dive in and be like, boom, here you go? Or do I want it to be smart and be like, based on your collection, because let's write that out too. Maintain a scotch collection. So this is gonna be done through Redis. You're gonna be able to list, add, and remove. This will be per person, and this will work out. So I think I'm going to store this by whiskey name. So when I do a list, it's a very easy lookup. Or do I store it by ID? See, the ID is a little bit risky because right now I'm doing ID based on the index of where it exists in the CSV. And if we end up changing the CSV at all, it might not match what we need to do. So I think I might just keep it by raw name and then do a straight match when I want to pull up whiskeys out of the DB. Okay. So list, add, remove. Okay. We can do that. All right, I'm actually gonna cut it right here for the first video. We're already at 35 minutes. And just doing a little bit of setup, but I'm just gonna take a little break, get some water, think about it a little bit more, then come back with another video.